The amount of hate this game has gotten from people who have played it and haven't played it is both justified but also criminal. Yes, the game had a horrid release back when it first came out in December of 2020. That's almost 2 years ago. Yes, it had one of the worst releases ever since probably No Man's Sky 3 years before it. It was in beta quality at best. But just like No Man's Sky, the studio didn't give up on it, but actually went and fixed the game, and it is actually a good ass game now. Probably one of the best open worlds that you can play right now. Yes, I finally played it after much skepticism because I also listened to all the hate it was getting, but I did play it and I did finish it, and I'm on my second playthrough now and I'm absolutely loving it. So here's all I have to say about Cyberpunk 2077. So let's start with the timeline of the game. The game was first announced back in May of 2012, but it took until E3 2018 before we got an actual trailer for the game, and it took another 2 years in December of 2020 before the game actually came out. So it's safe to assume that the game's production started shortly before or after they announced the game. So that's like a 8-year production span, and still the game wasn't finished when it eventually came out. The game had so many issues when it came out, it felt like it was still in beta or probably even pre-alpha with the issues it had. It had issues ranging from the game crashing randomly, you dying in the game in unexpected moments, the PS4 and Xbox One versions having issues loading, poor performance on PC. There's a long list of issues that the game had, and it clearly was not finished when it came out. I'll link the whole list of issues it had in the description below, but yeah, it had problems and it looked like it needed more time in the oven, and it obviously did. I can't speak for the game that came out 2 years ago because I did not play that game, but the game that we have now has had more time in the oven, and CD Projekt Red has really fixed what was previously broken, and the game is actually worth playing now. So here are the few highlights or a few things I've seen in the game that I think are worth mentioning if you're considering on playing the game. Okay, let's start off with the graphics. This is one of the best looking games I've ever played, like ever. The open world looks amazing. Everything is just beautiful to look at, and the characters are well designed as well. And not just the story NPCs, even the open world NPCs are well designed. They are just fucking beautiful to look at. Yes, there are a few hicks and glitches here or there, but overall it is an amazing open world and it is worth looking at. The graphics is the main highlight of the game since it was first announced in 2012, and that was the biggest highlight that people were expecting from the game, and the biggest disappointment they got when the game came out, that the graphics were not on par with what they were promised, especially on the old generation of console, you know, Xbox One and PlayStation 3. Yeah, the graphics apparently aren't as good on those consoles, but since the recent patch, the graphics overhaul that they did, it looks amazing now. But one thing I would say is, if you're getting the game on PC, consider playing it with mods, because since they've added a recent mod support, CD Projekt Red added mod support to the game, it will play perfectly with mods, and there are a bunch of graphics mods you can get on Nexus Mods. I'll link that also in the description below, and it's actually fun to play with mods, but I've recently disabled all my mods and I've been just playing the base game now, and I'm loving it. This game is absolutely stunning. It's beautiful to look at, man. Now let's talk about the gameplay mechanics and how the game engine handles the environment as a whole. So, in terms of gameplay, the game is played entirely in first-person mode. which was a new thing for me because I haven't played a lot of games which are open world and are played entirely in first person mode. In that sense, the first and only game that comes to mind is the Far Cry series, and from the get-go you can tell that this is a different experience from the Far Cry series. There was a lot of things I had to get used to and reacquaint myself with, but I quickly got a hold of the whole mechanics thing, and it was straight enjoyment from there. Yeah, the gameplay is fun. The shooting mechanics and combat mechanics in this game are actually fun. The most fun I had were with the melee weapons. Yeah, the blade, sword, katanas, and the knives are all fun to use in this game. Probably more fun than the guns, in a sense. Yeah, yes, that is my opinion. The blades are more fun than the guns in this game. The one thing I found confusing in the gameplay was the skill tree. In my first playthrough, the leveling up confused me a whole lot. I ended up just buying random upgrades because I needed to upgrade, but in an overall sense, I did not get the concept of the skill tree in Cyberpunk. The descriptions on all the skills is not as concise as I'd like it to be. Like, I'd like a full description of what it does and how it will help me progress in the game, but that does not. Cyberpunk doesn't give you that in the skill tree, so you just have to figure out what everything does. I ended up not upgrading my skill tree anymore by the end of the game, but near the end of the game, so I just played the game as is without any upgrades. I talked about the combat mechanics, and the combat mechanics are fun as hell. From the shooting to the blades to the actual hand-to-hand combat, the combat mechanics in this game are actually fun to use. Every part of it feels like I'm in the game, I'm engaged, and it being in first person mode makes it a whole lot better in that sense. It feels like an FPS shooter, like a Call of Duty when you're shooting guns, but it also feels like a VR game when you're doing melee combat, like with swords and hand-to-hand combat. It's absolutely amazing and it is fun. The driving mechanics are also something you have to get used to though, because they are some of the weirdest driving mechanics I've ever had to use in a video game. They're not as realistic like in a game like Mafia, but they're also not as arcadey as in GTA. So it's in a weird space in between the two, where it tries to be arcadey but realistic at the same time, I guess. But it's weird, man. It takes a whole lot of getting used to, and after 40 plus hours of playtime, I think I've finally gotten used to them, but I'm still not a big fan of them 100%. But one thing I'd say about the driving, the game has the most realistic traffic, well, somewhat realistic traffic I've seen in a video game. There are gridlocks that will make you insane. Yes, most of the time the traffic is annoying because sometimes you just want to barrel down a highway and not hit any cars, but it also adds to the realism of the open world itself. And if you have a powerful enough PC, or I don't know how it handles on console, but if you have a powerful enough PC, you can definitely have this much traffic if you'd like to. I don't know how to turn it off though. I don't know if this is standard or if I chose to have this much traffic in the game. And last but not least, the open world itself. Yes, Night City looks amazing in this game. It is absolutely stunning. The world building is amazing, man. I don't know what more to say. You can see for yourself that this looks absolutely stunning. And one other thing I love about this game is the photo mode. The photo mode is something I've had a lot of fun using. Here are some of the pictures I've taken in photo mode in Cyberpunk, and it's actually fun to use. One suggestion I'd actually give to people who want to play Cyberpunk, well, those on PC, is try the game with mods. There are a ton of mods on Nexus Mod you can get for this game to improve the character designs, improve gameplay, and all of that. And since they're now supported by CD Projekt Red themselves, these are gonna work flawlessly with the game. So try it. It won't hurt. You can always disable them if you don't want them. And last but not least, let's talk about the story of this game. I've only just found out that the lore of this game runs deep, and that's not solely because I just finished watching Cyberpunk Edge Runners on Netflix. If you haven't watched it, go check it out. It's a good introduction to the story and the whole setting of the game. Yeah, but no, I've been reading up on all the lore of the game, and it is very interesting. They have a ton of events and a ton of characters that they can explore on in the upcoming sequel or DLC that is coming up next year, Phantom Liberty, January 2023. Yeah, one of the characters I've actually been interested in and want to see in upcoming games is Morgan Blackhand. He was like a god, one of the only people to take on Adam Smasher face to face, one-on-one, and actually not lose. So yeah, the story runs deep. Yeah, in Cyberpunk 2077 we have a good introduction of the whole story as a whole. They touch on every little thing. The side quests are actually interesting. Yeah, if you wanna get the whole story and get the whole experience of Cyberpunk, I suggest doing all the side quests, which they're not a lot. I must admit, they're not a lot, but they take a lot of effort as well. Probably the same amount of effort as you would in the main story, but they don't take up a whole lot of your time like in something like a Yakuza. But they are good and they are worth playing. Oh yeah, one other thing in terms of the story, this is a game where your decisions actually affect the outcome of the game. So the game has multiple endings, and depending on how you play the game or what you choose in dialogue will ultimately affect what ending you get. So here's my final verdict on Cyberpunk 2077. Yes, I was one of the bandwagon haters who hated on the game when it first came out and threw a bunch of hate at it without actually playing it. Yes, I was one of the people who were skeptical about playing it even after the CD Projekt Red promised that they fixed it and after all the patches. But after playing the game, this is one of my favorite games that have come out in the past 5 years. This has gone on my favorites list alongside Red Dead Redemption 2 and Marvel Spider-Man recently. This is one of my favorite games I've played this year. It's probably going on my top 10 list of games I've played this year. And quite honestly, this is one of the games I would recommend everyone plays at this point, because all of the hate it's getting or it got in the past, yes, it was justified, but right now this game is pretty good. Yes, it still has some bugs, but all games have some bugs. That doesn't excuse them from not being great. Example 1, look at Skyrim. Skyrim is probably the best game out there, but it's the most buggy game that's out there. So I think I've proved my point. So my overall verdict, Cyberpunk 2077 gets an 8 out of 10 from me. An amazing game overall, and CD Projekt Red, they really pulled through. They really pulled through and fixed the game, and I appreciate them for that. So yeah, that has been my 2 cents on Cyberpunk 2077. I didn't do much waffling in this video because I don't have much waffling to do. But yeah, I'm not making any promises. Catch you guys on the next video. Probably be another game review. And peace.
目を覚ませよ、侍。この町に火をつけるぞ。